Hi, I'm Tim DeChristopher. I'm currently a student at Harvard Divinity School, and I'm also a climate justice activist, which is a role that I've been playing for a number of years. I helped start a group called Peaceful Uprising and did a lot of climate activism for a while, including civil disobedience. And it was during that work of doing a lot of climate activism that I started to see that the challenge for the climate movement was shifting from one of just being about reducing our emissions to being more focused on how we can maintain our humanity as we navigate this period of rapid and chaotic change that we're now that's now largely inevitable. And so it was seeing that challenge and seeing that the climate movement, as it stood at the time, and I think largely is still the case, doesn't really have any of the tools and the skills to address that question of how we maintain our humanity in these difficult times that we're on track for. But I think religious communities do have a certain set of tools and skills for that, and it's that's part of the challenge that people have looked to religious communities for throughout their history. That in those times of extreme struggle or trauma or hardship or loss or even excitement and joy and creation is when people look to religious communities and the religious leaders to help make meaning out of those sort of unprecedented moments in their lives. And as we move towards this unprecedented period in our social history at this point, or this unprecedented period for our civilization, we more than ever need religious communities to be stepping into that role of making meaning out of this chaos. And so that's part of why I turned to Divinity School and I'm on this path that I'm on towards some kind of ministry as climate activism and climate activism as ministry, and I'm still trying to find my place in that. But one of the things that I've seen so far in this path of trying to figure out how religious communities and religious leaders can most effectively step into this role that we desperately need them in relation to the climate crisis, is that it can't just be abstract, that we can't serve that function of making meaning for people in their crisis. We can't serve it just behind the doors of the church. That we can't be making meaning outside of that crisis. That in this period of upheaval, the old sources of our authority, of our institutions and our traditions, they're all sort of in question because we're no longer living in that period. You know, all of our religious communities and our religious traditions, even the younger religious traditions and the ones that are in flux, like Unitarian Universalism and things like that, all of those are products of the Holocene. They are all products of a completely different world. And we are now living in the Anthropocene. We are living in a different and unprecedented age. And if we're going to have authority to be making meaning in this unprecedented age, the only authority that we can have has to be from in the crisis, has to be from in this age. That our authority for making meaning has to come from our willingness to stand at the center of the crisis, and to make meaning from that place. And so I think because of that, we as religious communities and religious leaders have to be actually engaging and taking action, and experimenting and probably making mistakes and taking risks. And it's in that action that we generate our authority and our validity to be making meaning. And it's that cycle of praxis of action and processing it and reflecting on it, and that's where the meaning comes from, is in that cycle, in the heat of action, at the heart of the crisis that we face. That is the place for religious leaders at this point in history.